Hello, you are listening to the Blue Monday podcast. This is a 3 times weekly audio show looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club. My name is Benjamin Bloom and I'll be here each and every Friday for the Blue Monday preview show with a special guest to get their insider view on the next opponents for Ipswich Town. So first of all, apologies for the absence of an Aston Villa show last week. I just simply ran out of time, but we're going to make up for it. Representing 2-time champions of Europe, Nottingham Forest, from the Forever Forest TV YouTube channel and podcast, Mr. Adam Wicklow. Adam, do you realise the temptation to say Wilco, how great it is?
Yeah, well, you did really well there, Ben. I have to applaud you. Well, I'll applaud you like in the air, so it's not quite on the audio. But to be fair, a lot of people get it wrong, but you've been spot on. Well played.
It's like your brain can't process the word. Do you know what I mean? It just sees Wilco and says Wicklow. Adam, how you doing?
Absolutely brilliant. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on. Second of all, I'd love to thank Ipswich Town for beating Derby County on Tuesday night and shutting my mate up at work. So that was fantastic.
It was beautiful. We were like, do you remember in the 90s when the European teams came over and played our teams and scored after about 3 minutes and then just defended for the rest of the game?
Yeah.
It was like
that seems to happen now, doesn't it? It still happens now in Champions League, I think.
It was like an old school European performance. Anyway, Adam, quickly, before we get into it, can you just tell our listeners a bit about your YouTube channel and any plans you've got for Saturday's game if any of our listeners want to see the Forest perspective?
We started this our YouTube channel about a season and a half ago. Funnily enough, it was after playing Ipswich Town. And we lost, I think we lost 2-1 or drew 1-1 at home. I can't remember, but I think Jonathan Parr scored for you lot.
Yeah, you scored our keeper dropped one in the very, very last minute, didn't he?
Quite possibly. And I remember just being infuriated by the absolute shambolic messages on Facebook and Twitter and started my own ramblings on, and it's kind of just carried on from the start to what it is now, which I think is it's quite respected in the Forest community. It's still growing, which is great, but that's what we do at the moment. We just do vlogs and match days, and we're doing a podcast ourselves. On Saturday, unfortunately, none. I don't know if anyone will be there from a Forest perspective doing like a video or anything, because unfortunately we're quite busy. I'm actually filming the second round of the FA Cup for Notts County for BT Sport, so that's something magical, I suppose.
Awesome stuff. So it's Forever Forest TV on YouTube. So I'm sure you'll do a review and whatnot afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Right. What we do is we'll get a flavour from last year. So, and you'll be very grateful for the 6 points we gave you last year when we get to the end of the end of this stuff. So the first one, God, this game was horrible. So we're going to the 19th of November 2016 for a very low rating Sky TV match. Forest come out 2-0 winners, a game famed for Britta Sombalonga scoring from an Ipswich kickoff. Forest didn't kick off. I'll repeat that. Forest did not kick off. And a Sombalonga scores after 15 seconds and then at the end of the first half. Can you give me your recollections of kind of that game and the first sort of 4 months of, I bet all the Ipswich fans have even forgotten his name, Philippe Montagnier, and kind of how the start of that season panned out?
The start of the season was like Keegan managing Newcastle in the 90s when they just kept winning like 4-3 and 3-2, and we thought, oh yeah, this will be all right. But we've suddenly realised that when we play teams that can actually defend, we'd be quite stuck. Luckily, I think I'm rightly saying in this is that luckily that Britta Sombalonga was playing for Forest and scoring goals, and Tom Lawrence was on loan at Ipswich at the time and scoring goals, because otherwise I think both of us would have had an indifferent season, as more so than Ipswich, I'd say, because we only just survived on goal difference. What I remember of that game was I'd only just sat down with my mate and suddenly we're going balmy, thinking Ipswich have gave us a gift, because I think it was our first win away from home that season, and probably the first clean sheet as well, because we couldn't keep a clean sheet to save our lives.
It was just horrible, Adam. It took us about 6 or 7 months to cope. You know, the new kickoffs where you didn't have to knock it forward. So we started sticking a centre midfielder on kickoff, passing it to the left back, and what would happen is they booted it forward, and if we didn't win the first throw in, I think it was Osborne was then completely behind our midfield with the ball, and obviously Assombalonga, as we'll go on to, is a very decent player. Can you just do a little bit on Oliver Burke? Because I remember on our podcast last year you talked about flying out of the traps with Montagnier. How good was Oliver Burke?
I would say he was like a rough diamond, to put it. I think that's like the best way of putting it, because he had all the attributes. He's tall, athletic, really, really powerful player. And like, if you got the ball and you gave him an opportunity to run at you, you weren't going to catch him really. But there was obviously elements to his game that he needed to improve on, like his crossing, maybe getting his head up a little bit more, and I think it would just come with age. But he was someone that would get you off your seat, and like someone that get you excited. But we sold him for such little money into a team that just didn't use him, and it was like selling him to Chelsea almost in the Bundesliga. In RBL, because they were just buying everyone, and now he's playing for West Brom, and I think he's started to slowly get into West Brom's team, and I think West Brom have got a very good player on their hands. I think Pardew will like him, I'm not sure, but time will tell obviously. But I wish Oliver Burke all the best, to be fair, but I don't think he spent enough time at Forest.
Yeah, sure. So by the time we get to game number 2, obviously the shit's really hit the fan for Forest. So it's the final day of the season. Montagnier's gone. Warburton comes in March, and Forest are in big trouble. So can you set the scene going into the last game and just talk about what went wrong for Montagnier? And we'll talk about the ownership in a couple of questions' time. So just leave it with on the pitch stuff. But how did Forest end up in that position?
I think I've already mentioned it, and it's the same story for this season. Our defence is just not good enough, and going forward, sometimes we looked really good, and then other times we just looked absolutely pathetic and useless. So we did it to ourselves, really. Like, there were so many games where you expect to win and you just don't. Teams like, no offence to them, but like Burton Albion, who were struggling, and Rotherham, where you don't get a result away, and it was just a build up of shit, as you say. So the last game of the season, we needed to better Blackburn Rovers as a result. Personally, I was hoping Birmingham City were going to get relegated, because I'm not a biggest fan of them. But
that would have just been funny. That would have just been funny, wouldn't it? Because Redknapp was there, wasn't it?
Well, it was just the whole thing of them having Rowett being in the playoffs and then suddenly sacking him when they're in 7th place, and their absolute plummet down the league. So yeah, and thankfully Ipswich were kind enough to give us 3 more points and another clean sheet. And Assombalonga's last game. What made me laugh, and I don't know if you went to the game, was apparently there was a couple of Derby and Leicester fans coming to watch, hopefully, what was Forest's last game in the Championship potentially, instead of going to watch their own teams, which makes my head wobble.
Yeah, right, yeah. So, yeah, Ipswich were pathetic, weren't they? So it was a dead rubber for us. We had nothing to play for. And if I'd have been a Blackburn fan, I'd have thought that... Because, I mean, you came out really fast, and I remember, nearly scored in like 30 seconds, if I'm remembering it correctly. And just as soon as the first goal went in, our players were like, look, because we'd had a crap season, we just want the season to finish. So you're right, Assombalonga gets another 2. Full-on pitch invasion after the game.
I wasn't really expecting that. To be fair, I didn't really see the point in celebrating escaping the clutches of relegation, especially like...
Do you know what, Adam? I wrote that question down and I took it out because I thought it was impolite. So I'm going to ask it now. So a club like Forest, should they be invading the pitch based on, narrowly avoiding a disaster?
No, like in a simple terms, I suppose if we were like under Fawaz, it was dreadful, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a bit more depth. But if it was like where we were going bankrupt and there was no chance of us staying up, then fair enough. But we had actually a half decent team, and we've got some good players, and some of them are still there now. Some of them we've got rid of, thankfully. But it was just one of those where like we shouldn't really be celebrating this because it was absolutely crap. Like, celebrate if you get promoted and if it's in a worse situation, but it wasn't worth it. The players the players didn't deserve that sort of celebration from the fans. I think it was just kind of a build-up that we got rid of Fawaz actually more than we stayed up.
Sure. Before we come on to Mr. Al Hassawi, just tell me, you said about the defence and about it not being good enough for 2 seasons. Is that a systemic thing, a pattern of play thing, or is that actual players that aren't good enough?
I think it's more to do with tactics, because we've more or less still got the same back four, maybe a couple of players here and there that were really good under Dougie Freedman, but Dougie Freedman played in a completely different way where he gets 10 men behind the ball and doesn't really go off the halfway line, and if anyone does go over the halfway line, they get a nosebleed. But it worked for us in the situation that we were in because it was under embargo, so we couldn't spend any money. Assombalonga was injured, Reed was injured, Chris Cowan was injured. So for then it worked. But now we've got the same players but still can't defend. But that's because it's down to a different manager now. It's different tactics and we're a lot more open. So that's the simple of it.
Food for thought. So as you mentioned, in the close season, Evangelos Marinakis completes his takeover of Forest, bringing the Al Hassawi family's ownership to an end after 5 years. Can you sum up the Al Hassawi regime? Bear in mind, I've done one of these with a Sunderland fan, a Bolton fan, and God, who was the other one who was in despair? I've had like 3 horror stories about ownerships in about the last 4 weeks. And can you tell us a bit about the new guy and particularly about his match fixing allegations in Greece?
We're not like... Do you know when you think Nottingham Forest in the last 5 years, you just kind of think criminals. I think with Fawaz, he really meant well. At the start, he was like, he got everyone buzzing, like, oh, I've got all this money, I'm like one of the richest people in Kuwait, yada yada. But then, like, as it went on, it was terrifying. I went to a night the other week with Stuart Pearce with my brother, and Stuart Pearce actually mentioned about how no one was like in certain roles of a football club where they should have had someone in that's experienced and knows the job inside and out. But he was getting like his mates in that didn't have a Scooby Doo about anything of running a football club, and that's what just brought it all down in the end. It wasn't that he was a bad person as such. I don't think it was just he didn't have a clue, and he was too stubborn to get anyone in to help him and like let them run the club. Whereas Marinakis has ran Olympiakos for, I think, maybe 10 years or more or so. I'm not sure.
Don't they win the league every year as well?
They win the league every year and they're in the Champions League. But he gets people to run the football club within the first couple of days of them coming in. There was a list of people that were going to be in charge from a certain date of the football club, a chairman. So he wasn't even actually going to be involved. He was just like the person above the chairman, and then you got a chief exec, and you've got this and that, and like the structure was there from day one, and that was something that Fawaz didn't do, which is Marinakis has done, and it just shows that he's been a person who's ran a proper football club. Yeah, Olympiakos is like the Scottish League almost, but it's a bit more exotic, isn't it? It's probably nicer weather. But they in the Champions League every year, and they compete in the Champions League like reasonably well in the groups. They don't get very far in there, but they give it a better go than teams that get in there all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Is there anything in these? It was a match fixing betting charges that went back, I think, to 2010 or 2011 or something.
Yeah.
Is that still following him? Does that worry you?
No, that's all been cleared now. As far as I'm aware, I think he always denied it. That as well. I suppose that's what being really rich in Greece does for you, though. So, because who knows? But the biggest worry that we all had was that he blew up a referee's bakery for a game. So that was interesting. I was thinking that Greg's. Apparently he had a hit on a referee's bakery for a game, but that's what worried me more, that there'd be no more Gregs.
Unbelievable. That's what was that show, James Gandalf? That's Sopranos level stuff, isn't it? So Marinakis comes in the summer. The aforementioned Assombalonga goes off to Borough for absolute truckloads of money. Loads of new faces coming. So Federici and Dowell on loan. Bouchalakis and
Federici got cancelled in the end.
Oh, it did it?
Yeah.
Bouchalakis and Bosin on frees. Mackay and Cummings from Scotland. Bridcut from Leeds. And from the Premier League, Deriqua from Burnley. And a lesser spotted Daryl Murphy from from Newcastle.
Big Daz.
Yeah, can you talk about the business as a whole and whether, despite Assombalonga going, it was actually a net gain for the squad?
Yeah, I think a lot of fans will feel aggrieved that we let Assombalonga go because it's evident, and he's doing really well at Borough, that he scores goals. But I think with how Warburton plays football at Forest, I don't think Assombalonga would have suited it, especially as a lone striker. I think he might have struggled. In a two, he would have definitely flourished, but Mark Warburton's really, really stubborn, and I'll let you into that as well later if you really want to. I think overall the deal was pretty good because Assombalonga had this massive injury and people weren't sure about his fitness. But in terms of the money to then improve the rest of the squad, I feel like it was a good deal for us. Improving slightly on the defence, quite a bit on the midfield, and a lot up front is good. It still needs improving, but this is where I always think that a manager needs maybe 2 or 3 transfers to like really progress the squad from where it was, especially where we were, which was like down in the doldrums.
Yeah, sure. And break our hearts a little bit. Tell us how Murphy's getting on.
We love him. I wish he was 10 years younger, but 10 years ago he was shit. So, like, I can't believe his goal scoring record from like 31 years old onwards. It's like I don't know. It's like he's like Benjamin Button of football, isn't he? Like he's completely.
I mean, there is some explanation to that. He was constantly loaned to us every season and kind of played on the right wing, and then obviously in 14-15 just had this absurd season where he scored 20.
Actually played up front.
Yeah, well, he had played up front before then, and I mean he played up front the next season. I think got 11 or something, but the whole team was set up to get the ball to him early, to be one-on-one with centre halves and crosses into him, and he was just brilliant for a season. And you're right, because although he got 11, he did really well for Newcastle, didn't he? And he's already got 7 for you guys. What about Mackay and Bouchalakis?
Bouchalakis started off the season playing quite a lot, and then now we haven't really seen much of him, and I'm quite disappointed because I do think he's a really good player, and I think it's about just gelling him into the squad almost. But I feel like that's been kind of halted for the moment now. Barry Mackay is a bargain, absolute bargain for this market, especially like when you've got Neymar going for like £200 million or whatever it was, stupid. Barry Mackay is ridiculously cheap in comparison. But the thing with him is he needs to be told he's a good player, because if he plays against a fullback that gets the better of him in the first opportunity he has against him, he seems to shy away and doesn't really fancy himself too much. Whereas if he beats him the first time, then Barry Mackay suddenly thinks he's like Lionel Messi and can take on anyone. So he's one of those players that needs a kick up the backside and tell him that he's a very good player to be what he can be and more. But he's been stellar, to be fair.
Okay, so we've seen it. It's a bit weird in the table. Till a few weeks ago, it was Ipswich as well, but Forest haven't drawn any games, and Sheffield United have only drawn one, and so there's a lot of kind of teams that are kind of either winning or losing. As I said, just try and tell me who the standout players are, just based on the stats. I've got Murphy with 7 goals, Dowell 6, and it really looks like Mackay is a good player, 7 assists and 4 goals. Who have been your kind of 2 or 3 standouts?
Mackay, aforementioned, he's been quality. When he's on it, he's on it. I think I've been really impressed with Murphy, and I didn't get a chance to say it, but a lot of Forest fans were quite worried of signing a 34-year-old for £2 million. But to be fair, he looks incredibly fit. Like, he's quite quick for a big bloke.
It's not necessarily the speed as well, Adam. It's the power and the directness.
Yeah,
even if he's not running as fast, he'll just bloody bash you out of the way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think he brings players into the into the game a lot. He's just a good target man, and he's not. I don't think he's just a target man though. He can finish, and he's got good feet on him. To be fair to him, and he's like the dad now of the squad because he's quite an old bloke. But so Mackay, Murphy, and it's quite tough because there's a lot of players that come in and out of form. But I've actually been quite impressed with Joe Worrell, who's played centre half for us, because I think he's improved a hell of a lot from the last season when he first burst onto the scene from the academy. I think he's a captain in the making. He's been playing. He played in the Toulon tournament for England in the summer and captained that side, and they won that. And now he's been pushed into the under-21s, and he's only going upwards in my books.
Great. So, do you think, try your best, you can give us some kind of idea of a lineup we expect to see? If you're not sure, just chuck an either or in certain positions. But do you think you can give us a kind of roughish 11?
Yeah, I can tell you how we're going to play as well, and I'll probably tell you how you could probably beat us.
Okay.
So Jordan Smith will play in goal, Eric Lee at right back, Armand Troy at left back, Joe Worrell, Michael Menzies at centre halves. The two holding more centre midfielders will more likely be, I'm hoping it will be, David Vaughan and Ben Osborne. In a three behind Big Daz will be Mackay, Dow, and hopefully Carriol. I would like to see, but I know Warburton likes to play strikers out wide because he's a fucking idiot. But and then Daryl Murphy up top to score the winner against you. Unfortunately, you'll probably not celebrate, but yeah.
Yes, he did. Obviously came back from Newcastle last season and obviously scored at Portman Road. but we won, so everyone was a winner that day. Just two questions. I'm sure when I saw last year, Osborne, who I thought was really good, was playing quite farther forward. Has he been kind of put back deeper in midfield?
Yeah, he's been playing centre midfield predominantly. He gets shoved out left midfield every now and then. But what I like about Osborne's his energy is ridiculous, and he is a quality player. The last couple of games he's been a bit off it, but then again, a lot of players have been off it. But what he brings is he's just endless. Like, he'll make a mistake, but he will always try and rectify it. And he's such a good team player. And I think he gets a lot of stick at Forest because he just looks like he runs around aimlessly. But that's it's not what he does at all. It's just how he plays, and he's an energy type of player. But when he's on it, then he causes a lot of teams a lot of problems without doing too much, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sorry, just got interrupted. What was the other question I was going to ask? Mackay, which side does he play?
Generally on the left, so he can cut in on his right. But he has been known to switch it about a little bit. But yeah, he's deceivingly quick. Barry Mackay. I think if he gets a yard of space, he kind of tends to try glide past the player rather than actually outrun him.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree with what you say about because we've had the same thing. McCarthy's tried to play the 4-2-3-1, and we've ended up like Waghorn's played wide, Sears, McGoldrick, ending up strikers out wide. I just think these older school managers, they're not entirely sure quite how to do it. And it's interesting that you say about 4-2-3-1 because McCarthy often matches up. I mean, and you mentioned our win against Derby on Tuesday. That was a quite defensive system, so I can see him going back to match up with you guys. So, $64,000 question then. Can you beat us? How are you going to do it? And what do you think is going to happen?
I think we can beat you if we're on it. It depends how Ipswich go about things, and I think if Mick McCarthy watched the highlights from Cardiff, it will be slow the game down, don't allow us to play from the back very often, get in our faces, and just be really horrible to play against. If you get 10 men behind the ball, we just don't seem to be able to play against it. We've played all the teams we've lost to essentially this season have been teams that get 10 or 11 men behind the ball. Birmingham City, we got beat by. Cardiff did the same essentially and played really horrible crap football against us. Barnsley did the same. It's just if teams are compact and like don't really allow us to have space and just allow us to have the ball with like not really doing anything with it, then they tend to win because we'll end up just giving you a goal at some point. But if you allow us to play and allow us to get a rhythm, then and get in behind, we could slaughter you. That's how Forest are at the moment. You don't actually know which one's going to turn up half the time. That's the problem. We're consistent at being inconsistent.
It should be a good watch though, shouldn't it? Do you think you can give me a score prediction?
Excuse me. I'm going to say a sneaky 2-1 to us.
With Murphy scoring the 97th minute or the 93rd minute?
93rd.
God, yeah. Right, let's go to questions from the listeners. This is
Sorry.
No, you're a good man. This is Beaconbauer. Does he think the Tricky Trees will finish above or below Ipswich?
Well, I'm surprised how Ipswich have gone this season, because last season you were quite poor, but the start you had was ridiculous. It's quite a tough one. I can't really say. I think we're going to come mid-table. I'm not sure where Ipswich are going to finish, whether they're going to finish above or below. I'm dying, as you can tell. I think you'll finish below us.
Okay. Tim says, do they still reminisce about the Cloughy era like we do about Sir Bobby?
I don't in particular, because I wasn't born then. A lot of Forest fans have got this thing about living in the past, a little bit like Liverpool have.
Well, and Ipswich, yeah.
I suppose the older generation do. People like myself that were born in like the early 90s ask the older generation what it was like. But no, I don't in particular, but I suppose other people do, and I don't blame them. We had a film come out the other year called I Believe in Miracles.
Oh, it's amazing, wasn't it?
So I suppose that kind of generated the whole talk about winning the European Cup and Clough coming back.
And I think as well, Adam, Leicester winning the league, everyone compared it to Forest winning the league in '79, didn't they?
Yeah, and I'll shut Leicester City fans down by saying that it wasn't that great of achievement. Different. I suppose it's two different areas. You can't really compare. It's quite difficult to compare that sort of success. In all honesty, it's not
apples and oranges, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think with Ipswich, it's weird because Forest and Ipswich have probably been the two longest teams in the Championship. If I'm correct, I think you lot Pippers by like maybe a year or two.
Yeah, Birmingham as well, maybe Birmingham. Yeah, but yeah, we're 16 years into this dirge.
But it's a little bit crap because you're getting teams like Brighton who are plastic fans and people like, and no offense to them, but like Huddersfield and teams like that, and then you've got two absolute sleeping giants in Forest and Ipswich.
And Leeds as well.
Just Leeds and other clubs just dildering along, like just trudging along in the Championship, and it's shocking really, because if you got those sort of teams back in the Premier League, I think it would generate a lot more viewings and a lot more interest in all honesty.
Sure. Nathan says, why did you get rid of Bentner? Laughing face, shocked face, crying face.
Do you know what? When I first saw Nicholas Bentner play, I was like, this is why he was a Premier League player. Like, his touch is unbelievable, to be fair, and he has got some qualities, but he just doesn't fit in, and his attitude absolutely stinks. And to be fair, it couldn't get any worse that season. He'd come and play for us.
Okay, and I think you covered this. Troy says, how well is Daryl Murphy fitting in? Mrs. Nutt says, do they understand the depth of love we still have for him, like an ex we just can't stop thinking about?
I suppose it's like, I kind of still wish we had Luke Chambers, who captains Ipswich now. So, yeah, I understand that.
And you're not going to see Chambers on Saturday because he's suspended, which doesn't work very well against defending Mr. Murphy. So it's going to be an interesting one on Saturday. I mean, we're such a weird kind of team and club where we don't know the best system, we don't know the best 11. We don't really know what's going to happen, what team he's going to put out. It's all a little bit of a mess. We don't know whether the manager's going to stay on past the end of his contract. So literally anything could happen. We could win 4-0. We could lose 4-0. It could be a 0-0 draw. And none of those things are out of the question. So not a very kind of stable type.
It's funny that you say that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Last season we had that issue where we didn't know who was going to play, but we kind of knew what sort of result we were going to get.
Yeah,
because
right.
It's just how we were. But whereas this season, we've got an identity. We know how we're going to play. It's just whether which Forest turns up determines what result we're going to get. But the problem we've got is when it's going wrong, Warburton doesn't have a plan B. He just thinks plan A needs to be better worked on. Whereas I think a good manager, and I know Mick McCarthy's had like differences of opinion on him over the last season and a little bit because it hasn't gone quite as well as those 2 playoff campaigns you had. But I bet when it's going wrong, he can see it and he'll change the formation or he'll change personnel. Whereas Warburton doesn't tend to do that, unfortunately, and it really angers a lot of Forest fans because if he just changes those little things to hopefully get a result, then he becomes a better manager. But he's too stubborn in his ways at the moment. But I love how he works, and how he loves for us to play football. I completely agree with that. It's just little things when you're chasing the game is all that I hate.
That's extremely perceptive what you've just said, because I think everybody listening will be thinking that the manager you want is halfway between McCarthy and Warburton, because McCarthy, you're right, the other night in game against Derby, just brilliant, just tweaking little things to keep the clean sheet. And you say about Warburton never changing. The problem with McCarthy is he gets put in a corner, he tries a different system, and then the first possible thing of something going wrong, he then reverts back to this defensive thing. So it sounds like Warburton gives it too long and McCarthy doesn't give it long enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, interesting.
But they maybe need to become assistant and manager together.
Yeah, but neither of them in this universe would ever work with somebody else, would they? Yeah. We ask all our contributors on this, Adam, your favourite Forest player since you've been watching. Doesn't have to be a cliche obvious one, could be a cult hero, or it could just be the best one you've seen. Who do you think?
I think the best player I've seen who's gone on to play in the Premier League is Mikel Antonio. Was just unbelievable in the one season we had him for, and went for absolutely tuppence to West Ham for 7 million. It should have been about 20 because he was about the best player in the league and kept us afloat. But the best player I love overall for Forest is Andy Reid. I think the man who should be playing Sunday League, you look at him and you think you should be a builder on a building site, gobbing off at blokes about bricks. But he could play football brilliantly. He just had a wand of a left foot, this fat bloke who just destroy teams, basically. What Lee Tomlin does for whoever he plays for, Bristol City, I think.
Good. No, I'm nodding along because I remember when you got in the playoffs under Paul Hart, there was an amazing game at Portman Road where we were 2-0 up in 20 minutes, and then it was 2-2 after about 30 minutes, and you ended up winning 4-3, and I think there was Reid, Johnson, Harewood, Huckabee, Des Walker as a superb Forest team, and Reid was literally every time you got a free kick anywhere near our goal, you've actually scored from them, either from him crossing or shooting. It was quite the performance. Right, I think we've done it, Adam. We're on fairly limited time, so I will let you go. Do you want to just give it one more plug for your channel and where people can kind of catch the Ipswich coverage after the game?
Yeah, we're Forever Forest TV. If fans want to check out any of our content, we're on YouTube and we're on iTunes for podcasts and stuff, and we'll probably talk more about the Ipswich game midweek on our podcast, where we like to have a rant and a ramble, basically. But that's where you can find us. And
if any of our fans want to say thank you for giving your time up on Twitter, where can we find you?
We're just at Forever Forest TV, and thank you for everyone who asks questions and thanks to you again, Ben, for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this is obviously part of the Blue Monday network of podcasts. If you've got this far, you're probably already a subscriber, but if you haven't, go and hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or we do recommend the Acast app. Follow us on Twitter at Blue Monday ITFC, where you can buy a t-shirt if you look in the bio. You'll be able to see my match review on YouTube after the Forest game as well, and you can follow me on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. Okay, I think we've done it. Do you want to have the last word, Adam?
Come on, you Reds.
So we always say good luck for Saturday, good luck for the rest of the season, but maybe not so much. Not so much Saturday.
No, good luck for the rest of the season. No, it was really good to be on here. It was interesting. Thank you for having me. Good luck.
Stuff. And
good luck for Saturday, but not good luck for Saturday, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we try and catch up for the return game, yeah?
Yes, definitely.
Cool, great stuff. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Cheers, mate.